Let's begin in standing. Stand with your feet hip distance apart. Now secure the ball between your leg, that is, right between your ankle or your calf and your buttocks. Make sure to flex your ankle and square your hips and pelvis. There should be no movement in your spine or your pelvis. Now as you exhale, lift the knee up, and as you inhale, lower it down. Repeat that for 10 times. Remember to make sure that your pelvis stay very stable. There should be no movement in your spine. And if the balance is an issue, then you can take support of the wall or place a chair near you. Once you complete your 10 reps, then you change to the other leg. Once again, secure the ball between your ankle and your buttocks, and gently squeezing the ball will help you support it. So you inhale, you lower the knee. As you exhale, just flex your hip. You should feel in the front of your hip. Again, try to really stabilize your pelvis, and exhale when you lift, inhale when you lower for 10 times. Now let's change to the other leg. We will do one more set. Once again, secure the ball, square your pelvis and hips, and as you exhale, pull your knee up. Feel into the deep hip flexor muscles. This practice will help you improve the mobility of your hip joint, but also stabilize the front structure of your hips. Making sure you're not moving your pelvis or there is no movement in your spine. It's only and purely a hip movement. Let's change to the other side for another 10 reps. Stabilize yourself. Exhale as you lift, inhale as you lower. Sometimes the ball may be a little slippery because of the types of cloth you wear, or maybe you're sweaty. So in that regard, you may have to adjust the ball time to time. Once you complete your 10 reps, then you can take the ball out. Let's put the ball aside. We will move on to the next exercise. Now let's stand with your feet to your hip distance apart for the next exercise we call standing hip circumduction. Pick up your right leg and then circle it outwards. Try to move from your ankle, knee, and then the hip, as if you're circling your ankle first, followed by your knee, and then translating back up into your hip. Make sure your pelvis is very stable, your spine is not arched. Keep everything very neutral, and circling the leg inward as well for 10 times. Remember to breathe, so you inhale for half circle and exhale to complete the circle. Now let's change to the other leg. Pick your left foot up and do the circumduction outward first for 10 times, making sure your pelvis stay very stable, and you circle from your foot, ankle, knee, and hip. And then you reverse for 10 times the inward circle. This particular movement is very beneficial in helping you improve the stability in your hip joint and strengthen your hip flexor muscles. Now we will repeat this for one more set. So pick your right foot up in the air with your knee at the level of your hip and circle the leg outward. Remember to keep your pelvis very stable, and the entire movement is happening at your hip joint while your standing leg is firm. Once you complete your 10 repetitions, then you reverse the circle for another 10 reps. Let's change your leg. If you notice, this movement is not very common that you practice on a daily basis, but it is very commonly used in most of the activities that you perform, that is from walking to running to playing any sports, which require stabilizing your pelvis. So here, during the exercise, you will have to learn to stabilize your pelvis using your core muscles so that your hip can perform proper movement with accuracy. Now, once you complete your 10 repetitions on either sides, then you can put your feet down and prepare for the next exercise. In the next exercise, we will be using the maximum strength resistance loop. So I will be using a black one here. If you have any other brands, then you will be using the other colors maybe. Let's wear it like your pants and put it all around your knees. You'll have to make sure that this loop is right above your knee joint. Then you come down on your knees with your toes tucked under and hands a little bit forward to your shoulder, making sure your hands are shoulder width apart and your knees open wider than your hips, almost to your mat width apart. Now, making sure that the loop stays just above your knee and not too high on your thighs. Now, when you're ready, remember not to round or arch your back while you're doing this particular exercise. Instead, keep your back very straight. Now, this exercise requires you to pull your hip back. So, without using your hands so much, instead using your core muscles, focus on stretching your buttocks. Or feel like you're separating your two buttocks or your two hips, whatever makes sense to you. The idea is to separate your thighs against the resistance band and then push your hip back. This particular training teaches you how to do the hip hinges. So this particular movement itself is a hip hinge. Now, this is a very common movement in doing any kinds of squats. So notice that my spine is not moving at all. You need to make sure that your abs stay connected and you push your hip back and forth. We'll be doing it for 25 times. So inhale as you pull yourself forward and exhale as you pull yourself back. And the movement happens at your knee and mainly at your hip. Every time you push your hip back towards your heel, feel like you're stretching your buttocks. If you're doing it right, you will feel or start to feel in your outer hips. Making sure your back is very flat. There is no movement. Your abs are intact. And the best way to know that your spine is staying straight and everything is very stable is to place your hand on your back and maybe also on your belly in order to check. You can also place your hand on your buttocks in order to feel that stretch in your hip. Maintain the resistance, keeping your knees stable, all of that while you're working on your hip. So if you felt in your hip, you're already doing it correctly. It's an exhale when you push back or pull back. Inhale when you pull yourself forward. And once you complete your 25 reps, come up and stand in an upright position. So let's adjust the loop again and separate your feet a little bit wider than your hips. Depend on how strong pull that you feel against this resistance band. Making sure that your feet stay to your hip distance apart and your knees are pointing forward, your toes are pointing straight forward. Then maintain a gentle pressure against the resistance band and making sure that you're doing it from your thighs, not from your feet. So keep your feet firm and focus on separating two legs apart, like you're stretching the mat between your feet. So this particular movement is a mini squat with the resistance band. This movement is not by pushing your knee forward or backward, but instead pushing your hip back in order to stretch your buttocks. Again, you're pressing into the resistance band throughout this exercise in order to make this movement correct. You should be feeling in your buttocks, and we'll be doing it again for 25 times. It's very important that you close your rib cage, realign your head and neck so your pelvis, your rib cage, and your head come in one straight line. Right, arching your back is never a good idea. You need to make sure that your rib cage is stacked right on top of your pelvis and your head is stacked right on top of your ribs while you're moving down and up. Imagine that you're sitting back in a chair right behind you and pulling yourself out using your hips and sitting down using your hips. If you're feeling in your thighs, it's possible that you're not pressing out into the resistance band enough, or maybe the resistance band is too strong for you and you may have to choose a little lighter ones. Make sure to recheck the alignment of your hips, pelvis, and your head throughout this exercise. Now you can also place your hand on top of your thigh and slide it forward and up. While you lower your pelvis, your hands slide down to your knee, and while you lift the pelvis, your hands slide up to your hips. And once you finish your 25 repetitions, then you can stand fully upright and take out the resistance band. Now let's pick up the mini stability ball again, and this time we are going to place it between our knees. Your toes will be pointing inwards and we'll be focusing on your adductors, the inner thighs. So now we will be doing the mini squat in this particular position. Turn your toes in, squeeze the ball, and then just lower and lift your pelvis. Same as you did before, mini squats with the resistance band. Now your focus is on your inner thighs more than your outer hips. Toes pointing inwards, heels slightly pointing outwards, knees squeeze the ball, rib cage on top of your pelvis, and head on top of your ribs. And just like that, move up and down for 25 times. Focus on squeezing the ball. You should feel your inner thighs. And the movement is same. You're moving your hip back and forth, down and up. Now the breathing can be changed here. You can either exhale on the way down. Depends on how tight your pelvic floor is. I would recommend in most cases that you exhale on the way up, inhale on the way down. So most women who are having hip problems or suffering from weak pelvic floor, I suggest you exhale on the way down and inhale on the way up to help you strengthen your pelvic floor. If you have a habit of clenching your glutes and standing with your buttocks squeezed under or tucked under, then it's ideal that you inhale on the way down and exhale on the way up. Remember to keep checking the alignment of your pelvis, your rib cage, and your head. It is very important that you do not overarch your back. As you constantly squeeze the ball, your lower back will begin to stretch out and also improve the inner thigh strength. Once you finish your 25 repetitions, let's put the ball away and prepare yourself for the next position. This is going to be a stretch. So let's lay on your back. Now cross your right ankle over your left knee, and we're going to do a twist and stretch our glutes. So the opposite hand pulls the left knee, and try to maintain a little bit of resistance. So you press your knee into your hand as your hand pulls the knee down. So that resistance helps you stretch your hips better. If your foot keeps slipping away, you can also tuck your knee further up, means round your lower back a little bit more. Let's focus on deep inhalation, sending your breath to the sides and back of your rib cage. And then breathe out as you sinking your belly. So focus on deep inhalation without any contractions, and long exhalation. Notice the contraction of your belly at the very end. So for about 6 breaths, once you finish your 6th breath, then change sides. Hold the position. Take 6 deep breaths. Try to breathe into the sides and back of your rib cage. Slowly breathe out. The contraction of your abdominal muscle will take place by itself. Your focus is only on your breathings. So you inhale deep and then exhale, completely empty your lungs. Once you finish your 6th breath, change sides. Let's repeat for 1 more set. Same positioning, cross, round your lower back. You might want to move your knee a bit more closer up towards your shoulder in order to get better stretch for your hip. Take 6 deep breaths. Change to the other side to finish this 2nd round. The opposite hand pulls the opposite knee. Keep rounding your lower back. Tuck your pelvis under a little bit more in order to get a proper stretch for your lower back and your hips. This is a good stretch, a good relaxation after training your hips. You will also prepare better for the next series of exercises in this position. Take 6 deep breaths and try to relax and stretch your muscles. Now let's move on to the next exercise. Let's play.